Juggling motherhood and modern day life can be stressful and relentless, but it doesn't need to be this way. The Joy of Being podcast is the answer to maternal mental health, bringing sustainable relief and calm to hardworking mums everywhere so that you, your family, and work can thrive. My name's Marina Pearson, and I'm your host, transformational coach, and mum who loves to interview business owners, transformational professionals, and creatives to have insightful conversations about what it takes to really live a life that is thriving, fulfilling, and full of joy. And today I've got some amazing news. You can now order your very own version of the Joy of Being book, supporting hardworking mums to stress less and live more. If you're the type of mum who is struggling with the burdens of motherhood or modern day life, then this will be a perfect book for you. If you're curious, you want to know more, and you want to see what's up with that book, you can do so at www.marinapearson.com/order.
And on today's show, I have the beautiful Adey Jones. Dell's somebody I met last year at the 3PGC conference in LA, and I was immediately drawn to her because of her warmth and her beautiful nature. So we got talking and found that we had a lot in common. And last year I went through a major breakup, but also I found out that I'd been living in a narcissistic relationship for about 2 years with this man, and didn't even realize until I spoke to Dell. And it was during that time that I realized that I needed to end it and needed to move on. So with her help, I did that very thing. So today we decided to talk about this very important subject on how to identify narcissism, why we get into narcissistic relationships, why it's so difficult for us to leave, and what we can do if we need to leave and we know that we need to leave. So if you think you're in a narcissistic relationship, you're not quite sure, or you know that you are and you want to leave but you don't know how, or you keep finding yourselves repeating the same old patterns, then this is going to be an amazing episode for you, as Dell is really quite the expert in this field. Enjoy. So welcome everybody, and on today's show I have Adey Jones. It's Adley, right? Oh my God, is it? No, it's Adley.
Adey Jones.
Adey Jones. Oh my God, I'm so completely sorry.
Don't worry. I think I've been known to use the wrong name in the past, so for other people when I'm interviewing them.
And I'm really excited to be having this conversation with Dell. Because in fact, this is very, very close to my heart. In fact, it's something that I've been through. And Dell was actually somebody that I turned to when I needed some help with what I was going through with regards to being in a narcissistic relationship. So we thought it'd be really helpful and useful to be having this conversation for those of you that think you might be, for those of you that think you might be, and for those of you that feeling like you know that you are, but you're just finding it really hard to kind of maybe even get yourself out when you know you need to. So welcome, Dell. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. It is. It's something that, having grown up in a narcissistic environment myself and finding myself in quite a few narcissistic relationships, I'm definitely not a therapist, but I am an expert in this field. And I was just telling you that prior to coming across the principles, most of my coaching clients were people that were suffering from narcissistic abuse. And I sort of found myself throwing the baby out with the bathwater a bit. I thought, oh my gosh, there are no diagnoses, there's no personality disorders. I can't talk about this anymore. And what I've come to see is that it's such an important subject. And I think viewed through the lens of the 3 principles, it's certainly something that it was coming across the principles that gave me the freedom that I was looking for the 25 years I was in conventional therapy, trying to make sense of, my childhood
and why I kept finding myself in, not always, I had lovely relationships too. I'm definitely, I would ping pong, but I would find myself back in those narcissistic relationships. And I just didn't want to be doing that anymore. And I needed to gain clarity. And when I worked with clients, a lot of them used to say to me, can a narcissist ever change? That was like the number one question, because everybody wants their partner to revert back to that wonderful Prince Charming they were at the beginning of the relationship. And conventional therapy would say to you, no, they cannot change. Or very, very rarely, if ever. And what I want to say is, through the understanding of the principles, is that I believe that anyone, if they really understand this understanding and know where their experience is coming from, can change. They can change their behavior. But at the same time, the word there is, if they want to change, they can change their behavior. Now, a lot of people that are engaging in narcissistic behavior don't want to change because they're so locked into their thinking, they don't even challenge it. So that is a challenge. So when I say the 3 principles, I really, really want to make sure everybody out there who's listening understands that I'm not labeling a person or judging a person. I'm simply going to be pointing to a set of behaviors that are due to the thinking that that person has. So instead of calling it narcissistic personality disorder, or, I call it just narcissistic behavior. Because the behavior can change. If the thinking changes, the behavior can change. So it's not a sort of set personality disorder that is set in stone. It's just someone's thinking.
I love that, because what that suggests is that it's just a bit like, when we were talking about this before, it's a bit like having a map and understanding where you're at and where they're at. And it's not about who they are. It's just about where they are in their level of thinking and consciousness at that time. So it's not personal, which is really quite incredible to see it that way. So it's just pointing to where they're at.
Yeah, and I also want to make sure that this isn't, I think we live in a narcissistic culture right now. We do. It's there's an epidemic. It's, especially with social media and status and power and all these things, and people looking for that sort of to be special. And when you're suffering from this, behavior pattern, it's very painful for everybody involved, including the person that's acting in a narcissistic behavior way. So it's not a dirty word. It's not used to shame people. It's just we are highlighting something that can be very, very painful. It's a relationship dynamic that can cause chaos for both people involved in the relationship. And so really, the more clarity I can bring to the situation, for me, I would say it's, it's not saying, oh, it's just your thinking, stay in a painful or abusive relationship by any means, but just understand more, as I was saying to you, more importantly, I don't go into why somebody that engages in narcissistic behavior, what's the origins of that? Did they have a painful childhood? Is it genetic? Is it environmental? I don't really want to go down that route, because, we can justify a lot of things for certain types of behavior. But what I'm hoping to do here is to really bring clarity so that somebody that might be suffering can see, number one, why they're engaging in that type of behavior, if they are somebody that's displaying that narcissistic behavior. And more importantly, for the people that are in those relationships, to gain clarity as to, what got them, what was their thinking that got them in that relationship in the first place, and what's keeping them there. So it's really pointing to freedom, not the cause behind the thinking, but just freedom from it.
Love it. Because anybody that's listening here today, they might think that they're in one. And so I guess the question might be, how do you know? How do you even know?
Well, I'm going to use my little list here because I've written 10 signs, common traits of narcissistic behavior. And I just want to make sure that I don't give you 8 instead of 10. So I'm going to refer to my little list every now and again. So first of all, I'm going to describe what are some of the common traits of narcissistic behavior. And then I'll go on to describing some of the relationship, how you might feel in that relationship. And if they hit a chord and it's something that you recognize either in your partner or recognize for yourself within the relationship, that alone will give you clarity. And then we can sort of move on to what's, as I said, what your thinking is and what attracted you to that personality and what kept you in that relationship if it's painful and hurtful to you. So first of all, one of the main characteristics is that narcissists feel special and they feel superior to others. So that their need to be special, they like to be around other special people that recognize how special they are. So the ordinary or the mundane is like a complete and utter turn off for them. And they want sort of recognition of being special, even when the circumstances don't warrant that. They tend to live, well, that actually brings me to number 2. They tend to live in a fantasy world that supports this delusion of grandeur, that they're special. And, they end up believing their own fantasy. They end up believing the story that they've created around themselves to protect themselves. Usually they're, again, I'm going in the backwards a bit, but it is at the center a very fragile sense of self that is needed to construct this false sense of superiority and grandiosity and this fantasy life. So their number 3 is they're excessively concerned with appearance, status, and image. So again, they choose a partner that they feel will make them look good. They're special too. They're either uniquely beautiful physically or have some status. For those of you who can't see, that made me laugh. I love that. Marina enjoyed that one. So, so they just want to be associated with other high level people in their mind. So they go to the right places, they drive the right car, they go to the right restaurants. They're surrounded by beautiful, glamorous people, is what I'm saying. Number 4, lack of empathy. That's a huge one, actually, besides the superiority and grandiosity, the lack of empathy. They don't have the ability to put themselves in somebody else's shoes. They basically see themselves as the most important person in the world, and everybody else is there to serve them, to serve their needs. They tend to sort of almost observe people as objects, just to be there for them. So that it's so hard for them to even, as I say, imagine what another person might be feeling and thinking. So number 5, they need constant praise and admiration. So it's almost like they have a balloon inside of them, and unless they are being fed constantly, blowing themselves up with, people adoring them or recognizing them, that balloon starts to deflate, and that's very painful for them. So they constantly are choosing people to support them and bolster them up. So that's number 5. Number 6, they're highly, highly sensitive to criticism or perceived slights. Anything that threatens to, burst that fantasy bubble they live in, they'll fiercely defend, and they will become quite aggressive and attack. Again, I'm just going to remind everybody, this is just pointing to behavior that somebody is engaging in. It's not who they are. And I could keep saying that, but hopefully people will have heard it and keep remembering that. So what happens is people who around narcissists end up being very, tread very carefully. So the number 7 is selfishness and sense of entitlement. Again, they're the special one. They're the most important one. So everything has to be around them. They have to, they expect people to just set aside their wants and desires and just put them first rather. They also, they're entitled to have life run on their terms completely. Number 8, they frequently intimidate and demean and bully or belittle other people. If they feel that somebody is not adoring and worshiping them, they will drag that person down. They'll belittle them or say, that person's stupid, or they'll name call insults and threats and, anything to force that person back down into submission. Then number 9, they feel that the rules don't apply to them. Again, because they're special, they believe that they're above social norms and even above the law. And if they if they get pulled over for a a speeding ticket, and clearly the speedometer was showing, 85 miles an hour, the policeman's an idiot. He's a jerk. He's whatever. They don't take responsibility for their part in anything. So, which is leading to number 10, which is they blame others. Anytime there's any conflict, they see themselves as the victim, and it's always the other person's fault. That is also why you'll see in therapy so many of the times it's the partner of the person that's engaging in narcissistic behavior that goes into therapy, because they have absorbed all that sort of it's you, and they end up believing that it is them. There's something wrong with them. What can they do to make the relationship work? As I said earlier, I think off camera, I can't remember if I said it on camera or not, but I'll say it again. But it is that usually the relationship is so beautiful in the beginning, and if you feel that you are the one at fault, then at least you feel there's a chance that you can change yourself and therefore, heal the relationship. Mm. So, but again, people engaging in narcissistic behavior often don't go and seek help because in their mind, there's nothing wrong with them. It's always somebody else's fault. So why on earth would they go and try and, discover more about themselves, which again is what I was saying about the, about not focusing on changing the other person, like going, oh, wait a minute, I heard that, with the 3 principles, somebody can change. Let me change them. They have to see that something's not working in their life or in their relationship. Therefore, they want to see something differently. So I'm basically saying don't go running off and trying to 3P your partner hoping that they will see the light. This is really about, the person that's in the relationship that's suffering and seeing, as I said, what thinking they have that has them in this relationship. So that's that as far as the traits. So, and I could move on to, signs are in a narcissistic relationship, but I want to hear what you have to say after I read off all those traits. Were you ticking them away there, or?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, there was a sense that it was interesting. I was just kind of reflecting back on that, and I don't think I ever heard my ex ever say sorry. Mm-hmm. Not once, not ever. Yeah. And what I realized from that was that there's so much pain in thinking that there's actually something really intrinsically wrong with him, because he would say, to say sorry is to be beneath someone. Mm-hmm. And there's, you should never apologize about who you are. But what was interesting to me is that it's too painful to apologize because it means that there's something wrong with me. And then I might have to actually believe what I think about myself. Because often it's not even about, I'm not apologizing about me. I'm just apologizing about the behavior. And that behavior isn't personal. It's just an apology in that moment about where I was in that moment, not about who I am as a person. Mm-hmm. So I never understood that until I started to realize, oh my God, I think he's a narcissist, or at least not him. He has narcissistic behavior. Mm-hmm. And then what was interesting about this all was then I realized, oh my God, he constantly blames the world at large. He's always the victim. He never takes responsibility. He doesn't take responsibility for his feelings or his actions, or and real threats, like I want to kill that guy, or I want to kill that man, or I'm going to go down there and I'm going to beat him up because he hasn't done what he's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
It's a very when I was in therapy, they used to describe it as there's a river of rage that is running through these people that are engaging in this behavior, and it really is you have to think about it as, again, as I said, somewhere way back, there's still debate as to whether it's environmental or hereditary, but somewhere, for some reason, their total failure to understand who they really are at their essence, that they are perfect and whole and healthy and there's nothing wrong with them. For whatever reason, they don't get to sort of feel that. Therefore, this false image is created. And that's where they feel their safety is in that image, because they feel at their core they're damaged and broken. So they will, as you say, they'll threaten to hurt, kill anybody that is threatening that image. It's almost like it's almost like there's this very, very young child emotionally inside them, and just like little kids are like, yeah, I'm going to kill you. It's sort of but it's that sort of in that moment to them, they feel so threatened. That feels the only thing they can do to protect themselves.
And it's an amazing strategy. Like if that's I've seen so many different strategies that we all use, and sarcasm is definitely one of mine for many years, and until you start to see it doesn't work or it's not working for you. But there is this sense of like everybody else is to blame. And then there is this victim mentality that I am the victim of everything and everyone. And here we go again. And oh, poor me.
No, exactly. And I was sharing with you earlier that, again, and something I learned, back in conventional therapy, but I think it's really great because it points to a fundamental, understanding with the three principles is that we are all whole and perfectly well. We all have resilience. Nobody has more than anybody else. We all have access to that well-being that is within every single one of us. And what happens is, for certain people who are compassionate and loving, when somebody feels like a victim, you want to help. But what happens and I was describing this visual to you that my therapist years ago told me, and which was very helpful to me, it was that, when you pass a hole and there's a piece of string, sticking out that hole, and you hear somebody shouting from inside the hole, help me, help pull me out. Grab that other end of the string or rope rather, and pull me out. Now, if you're compassionate, you're going to want to help somebody. So you sort of pick up this string, and before you know it, you haven't pulled them out. They've pulled you back in the hole. Now, how many times, that happens within these relationships? Because often people that are attracted to narcissistic behavior, or people demonstrating that rather, they're loving, they're compassionate. And that's why the person that operates in that behavior too is attracted to the other person. It's like, oh my God, this is what I need. Somebody that's caring and adoring and loving and puts my needs ahead of their own. It's the perfect combination. And I'll talk about that later because it's really important to understand, I'll say ours because we were in narcissistic relationships. But for us, it's very important to understand what our thinking was, what the dynamic was that we send out this signal to narcissists. I don't anymore, thank God, and I don't think you will anymore, but I was certainly putting out that signal. And what I wasn't seeing is that the person in the hole had the ability to climb out of that hole on their own, just like we all do. That's what the three principles points to, is that person has innate resilience, innate well-being. And we don't have to negate ourselves because they're calling help, help, help.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something that I've really seen in the last couple of weeks. The ex is the ex now, and his financial situation isn't all that wonderful, to the point where he can barely, I don't know. Anyway, he asked me for money, and then I told him that I couldn't and I wouldn't. And then he told me that, you know, he had an idea, and the idea was I would go to the bank and get a loan, and then he'd pay me back. And I'm like, hang on. Paying interest on that, and there's no guarantee that you can pay me back. And I was like, well, no, I don't think so. But thank you so much for thinking of me. Now, what's really interesting about all of this was that, different to how it used to be, which is, oh my God, I really you need my help, therefore I help you. Now what I'm saying is that I can feel that compassion. I can feel that love towards someone, but I don't need to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. I can just be there and experience that for myself and send out whatever I need to send out, but I don't need to do anything for them. And that's been hugely liberating for me. But also it just means that they have to get really creative about solving their own issues and problems.
And clearly he's creative, because he came up with a wonderful idea that you should go to the bank.
Creative. I said, wow, that's really, I'm loving your ideas. You can start to have fun with it, which I actually started to have fun with it. I was like, you're really creative.
Yeah, really, exactly.
I agree with it, but
yeah, it is. It's just like, you know, with our clients, you know, one of the main things we need to see is, you know, they have their own resilience. They have their well-being. We are there just pointing. We don't have to rescue our clients. We don't have to. So why on earth would we rescue our partners? I mean, you know, especially when it's a dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about what you mean by dysfunctional, because I hear that word being bandied around. And
what I would describe as a dysfunctional relationship is a relationship that's not based on real love and compassion, that there's manipulation in the relationship. There's, as I mentioned, some of the, you know, like, I think a relationship that involves, that's not reciprocal, that it's a one-sided relationship, I would describe as, you know, I mean, we're all going to go through, you know, as we're human beings, we're going to go up, we're going to go down. There's going to be times when I'm down, and my partner is up, and he is there for me, and he's incredible. There are times when I'm up and he's down, and we will go through that flow, but it's reciprocal. It's not a one-way street. And then the other thing is, if I am being shamed and bullied and manipulated and lied to, you know, that to me is, again, I will use the word dysfunctional. It's dysfunction to me just basically means what I would consider unhealthy. So pretty much it's if you're in pain in the relationship, and it's not, you know, obviously we take responsibility we create our own reality via our thinking. But if there is actually actions within the relationship that are, you know, it's not just, hey, that's your thinking, you know, then I think it's just, you take a step back. And as I say, those 10 traits, I'm in the midst of writing a book, I mentioned to you, because I think that, as I mentioned, I used to coach a lot of people suffering from narcissistic abuse. And when I came across the principles, I was like, oh, you know, I can't do that anymore. There's no such thing as, you know, a diagnosis and a personality disorder. And then I started getting people coming to me saying, oh, I heard you're an expert on narcissistic abuse. And then once I started sharing what I saw through the understanding of the principles, it was remarkable. I mean, I just saw people really go, the lights went on, and I thought, oh my God, because it can scramble your brain. That's the only way I can put it.
It felt like my brain was in a washing machine.
Exactly. You can't see up from down. You're so I used to say it used to be like being on a merry-go-round. That sort of the controls went crazy, and you're sitting on, hanging on for dear life. It's spinning around faster and faster and faster. The horse is going up and down, and then finally you sort of like get flung off it. You're lying on the ground, and then somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh dear, what's happened? You're on the ground. Let me help you up." And there's that honeymoon period again, and then you're back on the roundabout, and it goes crazy again. And it's how often do you want to keep doing that? So should I mention some of the signs if you're in a narcissistic relationship? Yeah, just to, well, first of all, one of the things is, this is what gets us into them, because nobody signs up to be abused. So usually in the beginning, there's what we call love bombing, which is, it's usually a whirlwind beginning. You're on a
pedestal. Relationships, though?
There's a difference. There's a speed at which it's almost like, well, for two things. They feel special. So they're looking for somebody else that's special. So they're not really seeing you for who you are. They have an image of what, it's like, imagine a picture frame, and sort of you're in that picture frame and you're the ideal mate. And they are, oh my God, you're beautiful. You're so intelligent. You're so this, you're so that. You're so special. You deserve somebody as special as me. So they really put you on this pedestal. They tend to move very, very fast. I mean, engagements, rings on your finger within the first few weeks. It's an idealized love.
Well, move in.
Oh, move in. Oh, exactly. Move in. Really try and not, they want to secure the relationship very fast, either with a ring or moving in or whatever. It's a speed beyond normal. I mean, we all get infatuated in the beginning. Of course we do. And then, but we see each other's chinks. We accept people as, for our humanness and our frailties. We've got the frailties, they've got frailties, and we just move into a lovely, gentle place of acceptance and real love, deep love, not infatuation. But that's not the narcissist. They can be so charming, so seductive, and often one of the seducing methods they use, they don't come across as I'm superior, I'm arrogant, I'm this. It's like, poor me. I was a victim of something, either my childhood or my previous relationship. And usually being the loving, caring souls that get themselves involved in these relationships, that's just like, oh my God, we feel for them. We care about them. We want to take care of them. And that's where that first sort of, enmeshment happens, that because we're, two healthy people, or rather two unhealthy people get together, and two healthy people get together. You'll never get a healthy person with an unhealthy person. You meet your match. So as much as I'm pointing out these traits of narcissistic behavior, it's really important to see and again, I'm using labels, and I feel the 3P police are going to come and get me. But I
won't.
Oh, good. Or anybody listening. But there is some, and I'm just going to say unhealthy thinking, but, just for clarity, I'm going to call it unhealthy thinking. I know in the principles there's no thinking that's unhealthy. It's all right. But if we are experiencing thinking that creates a situation that we suffer in, I think it's okay to sort of look at that thinking and go, is that helpful? Is that something that I want to continue doing if it keeps getting me in these situations? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so there being perfect love bombing beginning. And the second one is the vulnerability, which I've shared with you, their ability to win you over, and you feel sorry for them, you want to rescue them, and all of that. But then what starts to happen when they feel safe and they feel that they've got you, then it starts to feel like it's their way or the highway. It's, there's only room for one set of needs and wants, and that's theirs, because they're special and unique. And you, by now, have fallen off your pedestal and you're just ordinary. You're like all the other ordinary people they've met in the past that have disappointed them and not being the perfect love they ever thought that they deserved. And especially if you start saying, hey, what about me? I mean, that is the sort of, that's when it starts, that the conflict starts, because there is no room for you and your needs. It's just about them. So if you're feeling that way, again, it's a sign that you could be in a narcissistic relationship. Number 4, gaslighting. Oh my goodness, this is a crazy one. This is what will really make you feel like you're going crazy. Again, as we mentioned, the rules don't apply to them. So lying is permissible on their half. So even though they may be saying something and you have evidence to the contrary, or you sort of know and feel that they're completely and utterly making stuff up, they will deny. And that's when you start feeling like you're going crazy. It's like, I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm hearing, but apparently I'm making it all up and it's not happening, even though it could be happening right there in front of you. It's no, you're crazy, you're mad, you know, you're just making stuff up. So number 5 is walking on eggshells. If you are, you know, and by now you know that it's their way, you know, or the highway, and you know that if you try and say, hey, what about me? What about my needs? Or you point out that their behavior is not, you know, kind or whatever, they will explode. And so therefore, and you have a few of those events, and you pretty soon learn to just sort of walk on those eggshells. You know, you don't want the explosive reactions. You don't want the fights. You just want to be peaceful and loving. So you end up starting to very subtly, they call it, you know, boiling the frog. You know how, I don't know if it's a real thing that happens, but it's a wonderful metaphor that, you know, a frog is in boiling water, or rather lukewarm or cold water. You start turning the temperature up, and because it's so gradual, you don't feel it, you don't notice it. And before you know it, you know, the water's boiling and you're dead. I mean, you're just floating on the top. It's a very subtle working and chipping away. So the other number 6 is, if you feel like you're your partner's mother, secretary, nurse, and concubine. Okay. If you're, again, sort of, you know, I just say it's like it's so subtle. It's that level of entitlement. It's like, do this for me, take care of this for me. It's like barking orders at you. Do this, do this, do this, do this. If something seems boring or ordinary, you know, waste of their time because they're unique and special. So it's they want a lot of, you know, you to be doing the mundane stuff. And even I throw concubine in, because even sex, it's like they want sex when they want it, regardless if you want it or not. And it's again on their terms. So, and then the final one, number 7, quite often, and this can be where the gaslighting comes in, quite often because of this constant need for adoration, there will be, you know, they will have multiple affairs because they're looking for that first flush of love, that infatuation, when somebody sees them and absolutely thinks they're perfect, that they're knight in shining armor. You know, if you, like in all relationships, if you're, you know, as I said, we see each other's chinks in our armor. We see each other's frailties. We love each other despite that. But that's too painful for a narcissist. They don't want to ever feel that somebody's looked behind that false self and seen the really, you know, really vulnerable. I'm not talking about somebody that acts vulnerable and acts like they're a victim. I'm talking about the real deep-seated part of themselves that they feel is broken and unworthy and unlovable. So they will constantly seek the newness of a new relationship while being in the relationship with you, because their needs are getting met. There's somebody, as I said, there's been the nurse, the mother, the secretary, and the concubine. So, but because they don't have empathy, will quite often conduct these affairs on the side. So that's pretty much it. Again, did any of that resonate?
Yeah, it did, especially the mother. Especially the mother. It's so interesting. I was just kind of reflecting on this part of that, which we brought in 3 cats. They'd been found in a plastic bag. They were just about to die. Anyway, he found them, and he came in one day and he said, I'm really sad. And I said, oh, why? He's like, I found 3 kittens in this bag. And I said, okay, look, he said, can I bring them home like a little child, right? And I said, sure, but here on one condition, you need to take responsibility for them, because I don't like cats, really. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I took them in, and it was funny because he would change their poo and their pee or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when it came to actually finding a new place for them, when it came to actually paying for their vaccinations and neutering them, when it came to anyway, I've finally placed them today. It's a big day. They're finally out of the house. Yeah. And it's not that, I had a bit of an emotional moment today. I was like, oh my God. But they're not here anymore. And I was like, well, that was really easy. That was super easy. But I was like, if I just wait for him to do it, I could be waiting another year or so. Mm-hmm. And I just needed it to be done. And so I realized, interestingly, my behavior, I never said, well, you actually need to take responsibility for this. You're the one that needs to pay for this. You're the one that needs to do this because we'd had an agreement. I just did it anyway, and then started getting pissed off and angry about the fact that I'd just taken responsibility for something that I said I wouldn't. And that was constant. I would go in and rescue, and therefore it felt like I was his mother. So,
yeah. Yeah, and there's nothing that will nullify a relationship more than that sort of parent-child dynamic. I mean, it can be, especially when it comes to sex. I mean, who wants to have sex with their child or their parent? It's a really, it's not a healthy dynamic. So, yeah. So, well, I know we talked about talking about some of the thinking that gets people into these relationships, and you've touched on a few of them, but I know that we don't have much time left today, so you mentioned that maybe we would do a second one where we talk about that, or shall I try and sort of cover it quickly here?
Well, we do have a little bit more time. I think we've got about 10 minutes or so.
Okay. All right, that should be enough time. So basically, I've mentioned some of these along the way. There's one set of, well, I'll use what the conventional therapy diagnosis is, but usually people that are described as having codependency issues.
What? Never.
I told you it's going to take another hour.
That's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. Okay, that is a whole other. But it really is. That's one of the areas where you can look and see what that thinking is. What thinking is behind codependent issues. Then the other sort of behavior is which comes in the codependency is the lack of self-esteem, the sort of the feeling that you're not complete and whole as you are. So therefore, somebody that has attributes that you feel you are lacking, you're very attracted to. So say in the case of, say, a classic narcissist, they seem powerful, confident, they're charismatic, they they have all these attributes, and often people that feel, oh, I'm shy, they complete me. They complete me is a dangerous sentence in my world, because there's nothing wrong with being madly in love with somebody and saying, oh, my life feels complete with them. But when you're looking to somebody else to bring into the relationship something you feel is lacking in you, that can be troublesome. I'll put it that way. And I can only talk for myself. In my past, one of my past narcissistic relationships, I was shy. I was insecure. And I was very attracted to what I saw as a powerful, confident man. I also identified, I felt very wounded as a child, and I identified with his wounded child. That's the other thing, is like my wounded child, sees your wounded child. And again, this is just thinking. We know it's just thinking. But that thinking, you end up feeling safe with them because basically you're connecting on that level. So that can get you into that situation. So again, what I'm pointing to is really working on or recognizing thinking that is getting you into those relationships. As I said, thinking of I'm not complete as I am. I need them to complete me. Or focusing on somebody else above your own needs, that codependency issue, and then feeling like you can't live without them, that they're the source of your love. And we know in the principles that is not the case. The love we feel is within all of us, and it is coming through us, up and into us and towards the other person. But it's never coming from the other person towards you. You're creating that feeling of love. You're generating it. It's generated within you. But, if we believe that it's coming from the other person, we become addicted to that love. We just feel that we can't live without them. Well, if they're out of our lives, we don't have any love anymore. We have no idea that love is already within us. Then the other thing is to really understand the concept of separate realities. They have their separate reality. They're just behaving on their thinking, as we are. We are thinking our thoughts that we take literally or seriously. We believe them, we feel them, and then we act out on them. So, and I'm pointing to this because I know in the past, when I was in a narcissistic relationship with a partner that was constantly cheating, I was basically being gaslit. So I thought I sensed something, but was told I was completely crazy and making it up, until eventually the evidence was just too much. And then it really did come out. But I blamed myself back then. It was prior to the principles. I felt like I must have, I wasn't good enough. If I had been enough of a woman, if I'd been good enough in bed, if I'd been this, I'd been that, been everything, he would have been happy. And that just isn't true. It has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. It's absolutely not. But even after the relationship was over, whenever I thought about it, I still felt pain. I still felt that I had caused it. And it was through the understanding of the principles that finally gave me the freedom to go, oh my God, it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with me whatsoever. They were just believing their thinking and then behaving accordingly to that thinking, which was that they were superior, they were entitled, or whatever the thinking was, but had no bearing on me. And if that's a message I can really get to people, is to just know it's just not about you, and to also just be very cognizant of the thinking that you are believing that is making you stay in a relationship like that, or is attracting you into another relationship like that. Because until we really understand, the thinking that God is there, we're just going to keep repeating the same habit and pattern. I mean, we all know that thinking is habitual. Some of us have had the thinking since childhood, I'm not good enough or whatever it is. But just to recognize that habitual thinking and to not take it seriously and to not listen to it. I mean, you demonstrated that earlier. It was fabulous when you said you realize just because you have compassion for somebody doesn't mean you have to negate yourself and take care of them. You can still have compassion, but you can also see that they have resources just like you do.
And also, they were living before you even met them. So there's an entire lifetime before you met them. Therefore, they're still alive. They've had some ups and downs like we all have. And I remember you and I having this conversation and having this massive insight, which was it was such a throwaway comment, but what I heard was that I'd been negating my needs and putting everybody else's first. And it was crazy because at that point it just made, I started laughing, didn't I, or something? Yes. Yeah, I think I started laughing. And at that point I realized, oh my God, I'm not going to do that again. That makes no sense to me. And it was that insight that then got me to go, we're done. I'm done here. I'm over it. I'm done. And the next day I just basically told him that we were done, done, moving on. And that was it. That was the clarity I needed. And interestingly enough, what's unfolded as a result of that was another huge insight into, because one of the things as you were talking about was the anger piece, right? That they've got this like rage and anger sort of inside of them. And that was really like my piece there was, I don't want to have to be at the end of that, at the receiving end of that. Therefore, I won't say anything, and therefore I walk on eggshells. But two things I know. First of all, since getting my voice back, actually quite nice, putting limits in, and they haven't reacted in the way I thought they would. And secondly, realizing that any time that I have been confronted with anger, that it wasn't their anger that was creating this fear. It was the story I had about anger was doing so. Oh my God. All of this thinking just dropped away. And now instead, it's very much like, haven't had to confront any anger, interestingly enough, because I'm done. I'm like, the fear is that it's actually, it's my story around it. It's not them. So there's been some really, and I want to sort of reiterate this in something that was being so full on. There have been such wonderful, profound insights into the nature of thought and into the nature of dynamics and relationships that I would never have entertained or even like started to dig into. So it's been a blessing.
Oh, absolutely.
Did you find that some of the...
Yeah, I just, oh my gosh, there's so many, as again, I think, I think a lot of this thinking, just even I'm hearing you say, you developed a story around anger. Anger was, you were frightened of anger, and I mean, so many of these little sort of stories we create in childhood, and a lot of also with this sort of, a lot of us that find ourselves in these narcissistic relationships later in life grew up in them. And we learned certain patterns of behavior. If there was a parent that was quick to get angry or to rage, it was like, you end up thinking as children innocently, we're just trying to cope with the situation. And we think, and especially back then, I remember my mother, quite innocently saying, "You're driving me crazy." And so we are taught to believe that we can cause other people's feelings and vice versa, that they cause our feelings. So I think it's really great. Like you say, you have these insights of, oh my God, this is when I first created this story. It's just a story. And I thought it was real. And, and I've learned so much about myself. I've seen how, when I say learn, I mean, I get to experience the expansiveness of who I am now. because I'm not living in those self-limiting stories that got me into those relationships. I love seeing the sort of capacity for me to show up in life that I wasn't before. So yeah, all of it has been amazing. All of it. I always say every single experience I've ever had in life is amazing because it's, helped me get to where I am today.
That's extremely hopeful, Del, especially if anybody's listening and they're in it. Mm-hmm. At any point they can see something really differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was actually, ironically, a very, very painful breakup in the past that I had a lot of thinking about. My thinking was driving me crazy. And that's when I was in an airport and I saw the book, Stop Thinking, Start Living. And I was like, oh, please, God, stop thinking. I need that book. And it was a 3 Principles book. And so that was the beginning. And again, I think, oh, my God, I'm so glad I was in so much pain that I saw this title and I thought, that's for me. And it has, this was back in 2009. And this has, been the understanding has just completely and utterly just brought me the freedom, as I say, that I've always been looking for in my life. And I'm so grateful for all the experiences that got me to that point, and all those after, of course. But the painful ones, I'm glad I went through everything.
We learn the most, isn't it? It seems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Del, thank you so much for coming on today. It was so beautiful, and I just really felt that there was a real flow to this conversation, and hopefully anybody that's been listening in, it's been useful and hopeful. So if somebody wants to get in contact with you because they're like, oh my God, I am in a narcissistic relationship and I need to get the hell out, or I don't know if I am, it seems like I might be, but I might need some help in deciphering whether or not I am, or whatever else, how can they contact you?
Just reach out to me at deladeyjones.com. Sorry, hang on. That's my website. No, deladeyjones@gmail.com. So, just reach out there. It's the easiest. Or go to my website and you can contact me through the website. But, this has been such a pleasure. And I want to thank you so much for reaching out to me, because I think this was a subject I was thinking maybe didn't fit into the principles, but now I see it's such an important subject to talk about through the lens of the principles. And I've already started writing my book about it, so it's flowing out of me. So thank you for that too.
Thank you so much, Del, for not only being on the show, but also for having helped me hugely in terms of my own situation. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And until the next time, bye-bye for now.
And there we have it, another amazing episode of The Joy of Being. And if you would like a more personalized touch to live a stress-free life, then why not find out more about the Joy of Being retreat, an intimate 4-day profound experience at a luxury venue in Javier, Spain, where you get to experience your inner calm and peace of mind by slowing down and making space. To find out more, email me at marinapearson.com with Joy of Being retreat in the title. If you loved what you heard here today and it's been helpful, why not subscribe or share the podcast with others? So until next week's episode, remember, you are the joy you seek.